Hello everyone and welcome to today's DASA Master Series webinar. Before we get started, I just want to take a quick minute to make sure that all of you are able to hear the audio and see the slides. So what I'm going to do now is launch a quick poll and just let us know via this poll if you're able to hear and see the slides, or B, if you can hear but not see the slides, and C, you can't hear or see the slides. And if you're having any issues, please just feel free to log out and back in, and that should hopefully resolve the issue. But it looks like everyone is able to hear and see the slides, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and move forward. Okay. Again, welcome and thank you all for joining us today. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Kimberly Betty, and I'll be the host and moderator today. I am the marketing lead for the DevOps Agile Skills Association, also known as DASA. I just want, if you have any questions during the presentation, you can submit them in the questions text box on the right side of your screen. At the end of the presentation, we will take some time to answer as many of your questions as possible. I also want to let you know we're recording this webinar, and I will send a follow-up email including a link to that recording and the presentation. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, let me quickly introduce you to the DevOps Agile Skills Association. DASA is an open global initiative to provide individuals, teams, and organizations a competence model and accreditation scheme for DevOps skills development. We are an independent, open association currently made of over 200 partner and member organizations, and our objective is to build awareness and provide thought leadership as well as practical guidance for DevOps competence development. So that's DASA, and our featured presentation today is about the need for new skills and the DASA competence model. But before I introduce our guest speaker, I would like to take you through a couple of poll questions because we want to understand a little bit more about those of you who are here with us today. So the first question we have for you, we want to know about your experience. So are you doing DevOps, Scrum, Lean, all of the above, or something else? And I just launched the poll, so go ahead and let us know your experience. I'll give you about 20 seconds to get your responses in. So all right, we have almost everyone. Almost everyone has given their responses. A couple more seconds. All right, I'm going to close the poll and share the results with everyone. So it looks like, based on these results, a lot of you are doing all of the above: DevOps, Scrum, and Lean. Many of you are, 20% of you are doing Scrum only, and we have a small portion of you, about 16%, doing none of these things and potentially something else. Okay, so we have one more question, so I'm going to move forward to that one. And we want to understand what domain are all of you working in. So are you in operations, are you in development, business, quality assurance, or are you somewhere else in the business? And I've just launched the poll. So go ahead and respond and let us know. Give you a few more seconds. Almost everyone has voted. Just a couple more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and share the results out with you. It looks like we have a large portion of you are either in the business and development or none of the above. I'm actually very curious about those none of the aboves, but if you want to share with us what that is, you can send it in the questions as well. Okay, well, I'd like to ask, I know I haven't introduced him yet, but Niels Loader is here, and I'm wondering, Niels, if you have any thoughts on these results, the results from the domain question as well as the previous question.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, especially the first poll, to see that about 50% of the people is making some step towards DevOps, be it through DevOps itself or Agile or Lean. So that's so everybody seems to be making some steps, and there's a substantial portion, larger than I'd expected, that is actually doing all. So I think that's very positive. And I really think that from a DASA perspective, we can add value to the people who are making that journey. Having said that, all the people who aren't making the journey, maybe we can help you along with it by showing you some steps to take.
Very cool. All right. I did get one mention on the question, someone is in training and consulting, so I'm guessing that's probably another portion of the group that's here today. Okay.
Okay.
So let's move forward. I'm going to hide this poll, just 1 second. And as Niels Loader has already spoken, I would like to give him a little bit of an introduction. So Niels is a principal consultant and partner at Quint Wellington Redwood, as well as a member of the DASA editorial board. And so Niels has been working in the world of IT for the last 25 years. He has helped a number of IT organizations of all sizes to improve. Starting as an ITSM process consultant, Niels focused on improving the performance of IT organizations, and he's been closely involved with the development of Lean IT. So he's also a key member of the DASA advisory board and is a part of the team responsible for developing the DASA competence model and curriculum. So he's an expert in the information that he will be sharing with you today. So welcome, Niels. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, great to be here, and good to be able to have a talk with you about the DASA competence model. But before we dive into the competence model and get mixed up in all kinds of details, let's just have a little look at where we've come from and where we're moving to, because that's a very important aspect of why this competence model actually came to be. And let's start with a classic case of an industry transformation. You've probably all heard the transformation of the car industry, or you may know the basics of it. But let's just have a look at it. If we look at the car industry started somewhere around 1880 with people in garages putting together things with four wheels and maybe a chair in it, a seat in it, and an engine in there, and trying to make this thing work. And as time went by, people got better at it. But what you saw was the production was based on single units. So single units, and that would then the subsequent unit would be different. It would be like 5 inches longer, or it would be slightly wider because the chassis we put together was slightly different. All these things caused us to really be learning about how this industry needs to work, how to put the products together. And you see a lot of generalists coming up in this age, people who knew everything about putting cars to pieces, but putting cars together, rather, not taking them to pieces. So there's this huge learning curve, and people are really not. There's lots of people out there doing this. The next phase is when we get into around the 1920s, we get into what we call the mass production phase. Now, what we mainly think about when we talk about mass production is these mechanized production lines. The Model T production line is the classic in this case. But the key thing to mass production is specialization and coordination. So we want people to come in, be able to do the left rear wheel excellently and quickly, and we don't want to train them up very much. We just need them to do that single job. And then all the things that need to be done around it will be coordinated by specialist engineers or more generalist engineers rather, and later on this turned into a kind of management role. And so the characteristics is really that there's this really short learning curve. And what you see is that around 1955, early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, you see the emergence of this thing called TPS, which is the Toyota Production System. And it's one maverick car company in Japan who decides that the way that we're working really isn't working properly, and we should be doing things differently. And out of these ideas comes this thing called the Toyota Production System. And this became something that we call now lean production. And with the car industry, if you as a car organization, car manufacturing organization, had not moved on to lean production by the 1990s, you were basically dead in the water. If we look at car industries like the UK car industry, the Russian car industry, these car industries basically died. Or needed huge amounts of subsidy to make to stay alive. Now, the characteristics of lean production are that we focus very much more on the flow of value, of making sure that we understand what does our customer want and try and produce that as quickly as possible. And we do that in multidisciplinary teams. And because of this, we've got these specialists who've now been turned into more generalized specialists. But this doesn't mean that you need to learn more. You need to understand more about how the product needs to be created and how it needs to flow through our production facility. So these are the things, these are the phases that the car industry went through. Now, moving forward to our industry, the IT industry, we see a very, very similar kind of transformation happening. We can say that there's from like 1950 to, well, I've taken 1982, we have our artisan phase where everybody's doing their own thing. There are all kinds of hardware companies, software companies. There's all kinds of people doing stuff, but there's no standardization, and finding the way to get things to work together is more difficult. Now, I've chosen 1982 as our changeover from artisan to mass production, simply because that was the entry of the PC, and server-based computing really started gaining traction. And this phase of our existence lasted until about 2010, and really we're now at the phase of our development where IT is moving from its mass production phase to its lean production phase. Now, if we look at the kind of models that we've been working with, ITIL, for instance, is a classic example of a mass production artifact. It describes how what specialist things need to happen, and it describes how we coordinate things, particularly through service managers and process managers and all these kind of roles. Now, as time went by, we started to get better at understanding how our business works, and we start to see that there are other possibilities. And already in 2002, we're seeing the Agile Manifesto arrive, and really the Agile Manifesto is the application of lean principles to software development. Now, applying lean principles to one part of the IT industry is great. I mean, it's a good start, and it's important, and there were very good artifacts that came out of that. Things like Scrum are real additions to what we do within IT. But really what we're doing is we're looking at one part of IT and we're not looking at the whole value chain. And this is where DevOps is different to Agile and builds on Agile. Is it basically says, well, let's look at that whole chain from customer all the way through development to operations and back to the customer in terms of a working product. And really DevOps is nothing more than our word to describe the application of lean principles to the IT world. So really what you're seeing is from 2000 onwards it started to grow, but really from 2010 onwards you see that basically the fundamentals of IT has become lean. Lean IT is really what it's all about. And DevOps and Agile are really just synonymous with lean IT, but in a more specific way. Okay, but they're all founded on the same basic principles. And I think this is an important thing to realize, because we need to make sure that we're understanding what the fundamentals are that we're trying to run our industry on. Now, in this transition, what we're seeing is we're moving from the mass production world to the lean production world, and we're changing the way we actually deliver value to our customers. We're doing things in a different way, and this means that we need to learn what's going to happen in this new DevOps environment. And some of the things will stay the same. I mean, we're still going to solve incidents. We're still going to carry out changes. We're still going to need to make a capacity plan. We're still going to need to make an IT continuity plan. These are all things that have been described in ITIL. So we need to do those same things. The difference is how we do things, and understanding how we do things is slightly more difficult than just saying, well, you need to do your work differently. Now, one of the big things I'm starting to see, in fact, I was working with an organization a couple of months ago, and the key problem they were telling me was, we can't get good people. And the interesting thing was that they were a very traditionally organized IT organization, and in fact a whole bunch of young people had turned them down simply because they were not working in a lean, agile DevOps way. And this is more and more the way of working, the method of working that people want to be in, and they want to be involved in. And this is something we recognized a couple of years back when we were working on starting up DASA, and we were looking at what is the market actually asking for, what does it need. And this is where our idea for a competence framework started. So we're seeing that there's this huge need for understanding of new skills. What does it mean for me as an organization? What does it mean for me as an individual to actually work in a DevOps way? And the key question we needed to answer was, well, what competencies do I need to flourish in the DevOps world? And this is really the question that I'm going to try and answer for you in the next about half an hour. And I'll try and take you through that, about the thinking that we had behind each of the choices that we made. So on the one hand, we have IT organizations, and these organizations are trying to move themselves into the new way of working, into a way that will support IT organizations, or support businesses in a much more effective way. Because the speed with which things are changing at the moment is a huge threat to a lot of businesses, and in fact a lack of investment in your IT organization and really turning it into something that is high performing and much closer to the business is almost a necessity these days. You can't get away with having a poorly performing IT organization anymore. It just doesn't work like that anymore. IT is so embedded in everything that we do, even entrenched industries that really have a low level of automation will be disrupted by some organization that has a better IT organization, that has a more responsive IT organization that can do more with the technology that's available to everybody. Okay, so we have this demand coming from the IT organizations, and on the other hand, we have a supply. We have a supply of IT engineers, and the question is, who's going to work where? And this is what the DASA competence framework is all about. The idea is that an IT organization can actually identify what they need based on the competence framework. And an IT engineer can say, well, look, this is my profile. Do we match? At least from a profile perspective. There's always the personal perspective that needs to match as well. But basically, you can do a much clearer demand and supply of this of skills in the new in this new world. Okay, so just looking at the goal of DASA, we have a number of things, but the key thing of what we're trying to achieve is to provide a service to the industry. We're trying to create a standard that people can refer to when it comes to knowledge and skill development, and make sure that there is training based on a standard competency framework. That is really the key that we're trying to achieve, so that people know where they're going, so that they've got something to strive for. Okay, this is really where we want to go, because we can talk about DevOps engineers, and many people say, oh, you know, there's no such thing as a DevOps engineer. You know, it's you can have you need to know so much, you know, especially if you're a so-called full stack engineer, which is even more of an impossibility. You know, you need to know your systems, your coding, your design, your empathy, everything all together, and that will make you, you know, this mythical DevOps engineer person. Well, yeah, you know, there are so many ideas out there, that we try to demystify it and just say, well, this is the starting point that everybody can work with, and obviously as time goes by, if the requirements change, then let's look at how they will evolve over time. Having said that, we've been using the framework for the best part of 1.5 years now, and it's been used at a number of companies, and we found that there's a lot of recognition that DevOps engineers or people working in a DevOps environment, let's put it that way, they have a lot of recognition in the model. So let's just have a look at this model. What is it? What we've basically said is that a DevOps team exists or contains two broad roles, and in fact there's a third role coming up, but there are three roles. But in the team itself, we generally say, okay, you've got people who are more related to or more interested in what we've called the specify and verify role, and people who are slightly more interested in the create and deliver side. Specify and verify has to do with really the front end, making sure that we understand what the customer wants, and create and deliver is all about actually doing the development and operating the actual service. We also have a role called enable and scale, but I'll come to that one in a minute. So let's just look at those. The specify and verify role is generally a role. It includes 4 knowledge areas. Basically, we call business value optimization, business analysis, architecture and design, and test specification. And really, what you see is that this is the profile that people will move towards who've been in functional support, user support. You know, they've been business analysts, QA, these kind of roles, and really they've had a lot of experience in dealing with customers, in translating customer value to features and stories that need to be created. They understand how customers actually use the service and are good at understanding how they can help people to use the service a lot better. So there's a lot of kind of support in there. So a bit of operations work in there as well. So let's just go through these knowledge areas and look at what they're really about. Business value optimization is all about really truly understanding what's going on in the business, with the business process, understanding those business rules. One of the interesting things that you find is that good application support people sometimes know more about the business process and the business rules than the business itself, simply because they've been involved in programming these things, or at least configuring them in the system. So they're also able to identify improvements. And this is really the area you'll probably hear the word biz DevOps, meaning business development and operations. And this is where we kind of include the business into the team. So really what we're saying is that the person or the people carrying out this role don't necessarily have originally needed to come from the IT department. Some people may actually have come from the business and may join a DevOps team to provide the necessary competencies in this area. So business analysis, this is one we know quite well, and it's all about being able to really analyze business processes and particularly information flows. And this is something that I've found over the years to be slightly lacking within the business itself, where IT people can help very much in that they the flow of information and how it actually gets processed through information systems effectively is quite it's a skill in itself. So business analysis is something that really needs to be developed to quite a high level of expertise within a DevOps team. And it's all about being able to, again, improve that service and create the value that the customer needs, and really tear apart the business value that we're looking for into the bits and pieces that need to be created bit by bit. So we're understanding which bits have the most value and which bits maybe have less value that we can produce maybe at another time. Architecture and design is a skill that we, or a knowledge area that we feel is very important within a DevOps team. And this is where DevOps is slightly different to Agile, because in a development team, we don't expect there to be architecture and design capabilities. Whereas in a DevOps team, we expect the team to be able to understand the architecture of the service they're providing and where it fits into the entire technology stack, and be able to explain to others how to interface with their specific service if necessary. So it's an important role, but it's not a full-time competency. It may well be that you have two people in your team who do architecture and design for maybe 30% of their time. And why do you need two people? Well, if one of them's on holiday, then you'll need the other person to make sure that the process of a workflow continues to happen. Because that's really the most important thing when we're talking about DevOps. It's making sure that work continues to flow as quickly as possible through the organization to the customer. And again, getting back to our brief discussion on Agile, DevOps, and Lean, flow is one of the core principles of Lean, and this is really what DevOps is looking to optimize in every possible way, using automation, using organization, using any resource that we have at our disposal. So The fourth one in the specify and verify profile is what we call test specification. Now, what we found is that methods like test-driven development are in fact very, very useful for defining how we're going to develop things and what we're going to develop. And this is something that needs to be done up front. We need to know whether the new functionality will meet the needs of the users. And we do that by actually creating the code or creating the tests first so that we know which outcomes are necessary. And this is, again, a slightly different way of thinking to what we traditionally see within particularly waterfall ways of working. You know, we kind of think up the test, and once we've done most of the development, then we get people in to work out the tests. We want to specify the tests up front. Why? Because we want to be able to automate them as much as possible. So that's the first four knowledge areas. We then have another set of knowledge areas that are associated with our create and deliver profile. The create and deliver profile particularly focuses on programming, on continuous delivery, infrastructure and engineering, and security, risk, and compliance. These are really the areas that that are bundled together. And here you see that people who've worked in security, operations people, developers, the really technical people will primarily find their roles in this area. And really the key here is this is where everything is actually created and delivered to the customer. Which is, I suppose, is why we chose the name as create and deliver. So we're making sure that but also things like capacity planning need to be in here. All the availability planning, IT service continuity planning. These are all things that are in this area of or in this profile. So programming is a core competency, and the thing is it's primarily in the create and deliver role. But we found that in fact everybody within the DevOps team needs to have some basic knowledge of programming. You need to be able to understand the code that has been written by a colleague. You don't necessarily need to be an expert in modifying it and doing wonderful things with it, but at least understanding what it says. This is an important skill for, in fact, everybody within the team. Okay. Why is this so important? Because in the end, everything is code. Even your infrastructure, especially your applications, all your interfaces, everything is these days is based on code, and it's all about code that goes through a continuous delivery pipeline. So somewhere along the line, you will be confronted with software code at some point in every single day of your working in a DevOps team. So continuous delivery is all about understanding the process, the key IT process from development through to production. And continuous delivery is all about automating that process and knowing how that works as much as possible. And the continuous delivery may sound like it's all about putting together tools and getting a nice pipeline together, but it is in fact more about behavior than anything else. It's more about understanding the end-to-end delivery of value than actually automating that process. Because if you don't understand what needs to happen, then you won't understand how to automate it properly. And what do I mean by in this area is things like understanding why you need to have version control. Now, In the olden days of ITIL, we had the configuration management database, and in fact, in the current day, we still have configuration management databases. And one of the classic problems that we've always had was keeping this thing up to date. And what you see is that if you're going to work with a continuous delivery pipeline and you're going to work with continuous delivery as a concept, you need to have your version control absolutely at a perfect state. You need to know what version of what software is where at what time. And this is a behavioral thing. Because it won't all be automated from day one, so you will need to know what behavior, it will need to be supported by behavior first. And having the discipline and the rigor to follow the process of when you make a mistake, go back to the beginning and start all over again. Don't just fix it halfway through the process and then continue, but you need to go back to the start, having fixed the problem area and then move through again. And these are very important aspects that need to be understood. So we have people in the team who are monitoring whether the whole team is actually exhibiting the right behavior. Infrastructure engineering, obviously, the automation of technological environments. This is slightly different to actually creating application code. It's all about having a good understanding of the underlying infrastructure technology. And what you see is that we're seeing a kind of split of teams in DevOps. You're seeing application-oriented teams and you're seeing infrastructure-oriented teams. So these infrastructure-oriented teams are actually there to create clickable products which can be created from a website. So I need an environment with Linux Red Hat 6.4 on it with the new version of my application on it and a particular database. And I need that to be spun out within literally minutes, if not seconds. And these environments will be created by specialists, DevOps teams at an infrastructure level, but it's important for the application teams to have that infrastructural knowledge to understand what they're actually asking for and make sure that it's the right thing. And last but not least, we certainly need to have security, risk, and compliance in our team. And security, risk, and compliance is another way of saying we need to build quality in at the source. And quality at the source is really a very lean term. It's all about making sure that every step along the way, we are making sure that any errors are signaled, are understood, and we turn those problems into an improved quality in our process. And the interesting thing here is that you'll hear the words, a variant on the DevOps theme in terms of DevSecOps. Well, we believe that security is already included in the whole DevOps word, as we saw with business as well. It's included in DevOps. You need it to make your team valuable to the customer from the get-go. So in terms of knowledge, what we need is for us to have a successful DevOps team, we need to have all of these knowledge areas at the right level. And I'll come to the levels in just a little while. The other part of the competence model is really in a broad way about leadership, and we call it the enable and scale role, and it includes what we've called the skills. And I'll describe those in just a minute, but it's really all about making sure that we can coordinate and organize ourselves and that we have an understanding of what behavior is necessary to create this DevOps transformation and to sustain it. So enable and scale, as I said, it includes our skill areas. These are courage, team building, DevOps leadership, and continuous improvement. And in the competence framework, we actually split each of those into two categories. One is the skill for leadership and the skill for a team member, because they're slightly different. With team members, we need to have them focusing on building a team together, and leaders need to be looking at how do we create a team of teams, basically, and how can I help to develop or how can I help a number of team members to actually create a team together? So it's more a facilitating aspect. So in the model, which you can download from the website, you can see how this is slightly different. So what's team building all about? Well, team building is all about making sure that we bring a small number of people together who have complementary skills and knowledge, and who are committed to a common purpose, which is to develop and deliver a service to customers. They set their own performance goals, and the great thing about DevOps teams is they hold each other mutually responsible. And this is something special that you see happening in DevOps teams that really start to work well, is the team really corrects itself and helps to move the performance to a higher level. A cool example of this is I've seen teams or services where before they had a DevOps team, there was let's say an index of 100 incidents, and when the DevOps team was up and running, you saw the number of incidents actually collapsing to maybe an index of 10 in comparison to what it was, and this is simply because they're holding the people that get sick of incidents, and they want to remove them, and they hold each other mutually responsible for a high quality product. And it encourages collaboration. It makes sure that there's an open and trusting environment, and it's quite special to see it happen. DevOps leadership, where we're looking more at kind of mission command. This is what you need to do, and go do it, and let me know how I can help you. And managers are there to observe what behavior is going on in the team and make sure that this behavior is helped to evolve into effective behavior and effective habits. Making sure that team members give each other decent feedback rather than just say, that was terrible and you should do this better, and being rather destructive to one another, helping each other to create an environment again in which the whole team can be successful. Continuous improvement is absolutely vital. This is really the only way to sustain the performance that you achieve in the team to start with, and it's all about very much lean aspects of problem solving every day, of doing Kaizen, and really focusing on creating a service that doesn't have as much technical debt in it as previously. And last but not least, we have the courage, and this is the fail fast, deliver minimum viable product, make sure that customers get what they get something of value, give you feedback, and then get you to take more steps, more small steps to provide even more value. So this is really what DevOps, what the behavioral side of it is all about. So our competence framework basically is made up of 12 aspects, and what you can see is that people can score themselves on a scan. We have a scan up and running on the website now, a very simple one that you can use, and you can look into this through the white papers that are also on the website. And what we try to do is create a team that covers all the bases. So we're looking for a team of somewhere around 7, 8, 9 people who together have full coverage of all this knowledge and skill areas, and make sure that each person has some form of backup. And this would be a great start to a team. Now, initially, when you put a team together, you find that there are areas missing, or we don't have the knowledge or skills at the right area, at the right level. And this is so now we know which areas we need to work on together. So basically, we start with the novice level, and we're trying to get people up to master level. And what we're looking for in a basic DevOps team is that they have all of the areas covered at level 4. The DevOps fundamentals training that DASA provides will get everybody to level 2 on this scale, and then it's all about building specific technical skills to go on top of that. So there's the DevOps maturity model is also available. We've described each of the skill areas and knowledge areas, and what they describe and what they need to look like. So this can help you along the way to helping to understand how to formulate the demand you have for people in the team, and for people for individual engineers, to be able to explain what they can supply to a team. So let's just have a little look at a journey. Let's have a look at Bob. Bob's a tester. He's been working within IT for 4 years. He's got a couple of test certifications, and he's done a bit of test analysis, and he's been moving towards doing a bit of business analysis, which he thought was quite interesting. So what he'd do was is first kind of do a DASA competence framework scan, and he scores himself and gets a particular profile, and he's trying to find his way in the organization, which is changing. It's becoming a more DevOps, or they've announced that they're going to put him into a DevOps team, and he needs to kind of know what he's going to do. So Bob gets assigned to a DevOps team, and he really, having looked at the profile and having looked at all the possibilities, he's kind of decided that his ambition is more in the specify and verify side of things, dealing with customers on a day-to-day basis. But really, his profile's lacking a number of aspects, particularly architecture and design, test specification. Something that he's able to add value to the team, but in other areas he's a bit low. So Bob starts his journey with a DevOps fundamentals training, and he gets himself to level 2 in all areas. So he knows now what's expected of him. And what you see is that we've done the DevOps fundamentals training in a number of, or in tens of teams now, and what you see is that teams gain a common understanding of where they're going and what they're trying to achieve, and this is quite an important phase in what they in the development of the team. Then Bob starts working and does bits and pieces in the team, and the team realizes that they need some more capability in the area of business value optimization and business analysis. And Bob sticks up his hand and says, "Hey, I'll do some of that." So he goes to, for example, the International Institute of Business Analysis, and does his certification of capability in business analysis. So he gets a step further in that area. he could go to ISKI and do a course on requirements management. Now, these are various additions that DASA does not provide because they are provided elsewhere. DASA only provides certifications where it sees that there are really things missing in the current curricula that are available. But obviously, business analysis is a known area, and you basically pick up your knowledge from the experts in that area. Bob continues to develop, and he'll do a lot of learning on the job in supporting his colleagues, especially things like business value optimization. There's not a lot of courses out there on how to do that. You need to really go and sit with the customer, look at how they're using the service, look at how they're using the systems, and really understand their processes. But having done that, having gained a lot of practical experience, he does a specify and verify specialization course, sorry, and increases his knowledge in business value optimization, business analysis, architecture and design, and test specification. As he moves on, he has more interactions with colleagues, and really wants to learn a lot more about the architecture and design side of things. So does a course on TOGAF, which gets him to a great level in architecture and design, and allows him to do more and more in that area. Maybe also a certified Agile test-driven development training and certification to add onto his stack. And so Bob ends up with, after a number of months, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, with a kind of stack of trainings that provide his value to the team. So we've got a DevOps Fundamentals, the DevOps Practitioner, which focuses on the skill areas, and then his content courses that he'll take along the way. Now, there are a number of these kind of stacks that people can build, and obviously the profiles that we've defined are generic profiles, but everybody's free to build their own profile as required within the team. So if the team says, okay, well, we actually need business value optimization, business analysis, and programming, then you can build your own bespoke stack based on those 3 requirements of the team. And as over the years, the team composition may change as people move in and move out of the team, because this happens even though we talk about fixed teams, and then new gaps will arise, and there'll be new possibilities for people to develop. But this is really the journey. This is what we've tried to model and show how the DevOps competence, the DASA DevOps competence framework helps people, individuals on their journey, at the same time helping teams to develop as well. Now, that's really the story I wanted to tell you today. Kimberly, are there any questions?
Thank you, Niels. It looks like we have a few questions that have come in. So I think we have quite a bit of time. We still have about 7 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the first question. The first question is, has the DASA competence framework been used in practice? And what were the results?
Yes, it has. And then this is where I'm just going to talk a little bit from my other role in terms of consultant, principal consultant for Quint Wellington Redwood. We've actually used this model with a number of customers, and one was particularly successful. One of the large Dutch banks we came in with the model and with a competence with the scan related to this model, and we kind of helped two teams to work with it, and they kind of liked this thing. So we went away, and literally a week later they called us again and said, well, could you come and help another 6 teams to use the scan, and can you help them out? Okay, so we came back and helped 6, and in fact within I think it was 4 months, we had 45 teams that were using the competence scan. So on average we've got, say, 8-9 people per team, each of them filling out this competence scan, us bringing together all these profiles and helping the teams to identify what knowledge areas do they need to improve on, and what skill areas do they need to work on. And this was an amazing result, and they were very, very happy with their ability to develop the team more quickly than they'd initially thought. And we see that the performance of teams that are using the competence scan is in fact somewhere between 20 and 30% better than teams not using the competence scan. So it really helps to accelerate the capabilities of the teams. So I've seen it work, and I've seen the value of it, and literally for 43 of the 45 teams, we did literally no marketing, no communication. It all came from the 2 original teams that did the scan first, which was a very pleasant surprise for us.
Okay. And just a quick reminder to everybody who's still on the line, if you do have additional questions, feel free to add them into the questions tab on the right side of the screen. So the next question we have is, how does the DASA competence framework relate to ECF or SFIA?
Yeah, we've done a mapping to particularly to ECF, the e-competence framework set up by the European Union. It tends to get used in Europe and I believe Japan a lot. I don't know whether it has it gets used a lot in the US, but and this is a competence framework that very much looks at the things we need to do. So it's what we found in our mapping was that the whole skill area is very much underrepresented in ECF. The knowledge areas are well represented. That's not a problem at all. But we found that the need for the skills is a very, very big part of being successful in a DevOps environment, and this is why ECF will help to a great extent, because it'll tell you what you need to do, but it doesn't talk much about how you're going to do things, and this is where the real value of DevOps is. And I believe that there is a case for upgrading ECF. In fact, they could upgrade to the DASA competence framework if they wanted to.
Okay, great. And we have a few more questions still. So the next question from Dunya is, how do you see the DASA competence scan in combination with DevOps teams working on COTS, software as a service solutions, so not traditional development teams?
It works in the same way, except that things like programming will be less less important in terms of saying that you've got this software as a service. You need to be able to configure it, and that will be probably the sum total of the programming that you do. You would, and so it would be a lot less in terms of the actual detailed knowledge you need to have of things like continuous delivery pipelines, this kind of stuff. But I would say even more requirements in terms of the skill areas, so the courage, the continuous improvement side of things, but even aspects like business value optimization, business analysis. These are the areas where you're going to need to be acing it with your customers.
Okay. And we have a question specific to coding and scripting competencies. So Roll wants to know if, let's see if I understand this question. He wants to see if you see a big transition from admins to coders, and if there are enough coding and scripting competencies in the market to transform organizations to DevOps.
Well, starting with the last one, it's starting to become an issue. And I think you're right in saying that we're going to be moving towards more coders than admins. Admins, will still be relevant for many years yet, because we haven't transitioned all our services into easily codable systems yet. But it is a role that will be marginalized. I think coding is going to become a core competence of pretty much anybody who wants to work in IT. You're seeing it already that the kids at school are getting programming lessons. It's something that's just going to start happening, and as it becomes more and more prevalent in the market, we're going to see that coding's going to get easier and easier. There'll be more and more support tools, more and more easier coding languages to support it.
Okay, and we have, we're at the time, but I have one more question that I would like to ask from the audience. We have Orhan wants to know if the DevOps DASA maturity model is published and available.
Yes, it is. There are two white papers. One that describes basically the broad strokes of how we came to our competence framework. There's a second one that goes into detail about all the bits and pieces of the competence framework. I think you can download a kind of PDF of the criteria per level, and as I said, I think there is a high-level scan that you can do currently, and we're currently working on a slightly more detailed one, but we wanted to get a simple version out so that people could already use it. I think that's live, or it's going live soon.
Okay, so Niels, you got the jump on me, actually. I was going to plug these white papers, snacks that you already shared. So, so thank you so much. As a part of the follow-up to this webinar, I'm going to be sending the link to these two white papers. So we have the Embracing Digital Disruption by Adopting DevOps Practices, and then the second one, which Niels was just referring to, the need for new skills, which has all of this information inside of it. So I will be sending that to all of you within the next week, along with the recording and a copy of these slides. So if you need to reach out to us for any reason at all, if you have any additional questions, or if you'd like to partner with DASA, you can reach out to either Niels or myself with this contact information. And again, you'll receive this PowerPoint with those emails. And I just finally want to thank everyone for coming. A special thank you to our presenter, Niels Loader. We really appreciate the time you've spent to share your expertise on the DASA competence model. And so, Yeah, a quick note to our audience first. Once you sign off from this webinar, you should receive a request to take a brief survey. So we just want to ask you to please fill that out to help us improve in the future. Other than that, you'll receive my follow-up within a week. And Niels, if you have any closing remarks, you could go ahead.
No, I do. Just thank everybody for joining. I hope it's been useful. I certainly know that the competence model is a very practical and useful model if you're moving towards DevOps. So please, don't miss it out. Please make use of it. It's free.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And with that, I'm going to close out this session. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.